The Alchemy of Happiness by Al-Ghazali. Translated by Claude Field. Read by Mark Cassidy. Introduction. Know, O beloved, that man was not created in jest or at random, but marvellously made and for some great end. Although he is not from everlasting, yet he lives forever, and though his body is mean and earthly, yet his spirit is lofty and divine. When in the struggle of self-discipline, he is purged from carnal passions, he attains to the highest, and in place of being a slave to lust and anger, becomes endued with angelic qualities. Attaining that state, he finds his heaven in the contemplation of eternal beauty, and no longer in fleshly delights. The spiritual alchemy which operates this change in him, like that which transmutes base metals into gold, is not easily discovered, nor to be found in the house of every old woman. It is to explain this alchemy and its methods of operation that the author has undertaken this work, which he has entitled The Alchemy of Happiness. Now the treasuries of God in which this alchemy is to be sought are the hearts of the prophets, and he who seeks it elsewhere will be disappointed and bankrupt on the day of judgment, when he hears the words, "We have lifted the veil from off thee, and your sight today is keen." God has sent on earth 124,000 prophets to teach men the prescription of this alchemy and how to purify their hearts from baser qualities in the crucible of abstinence. This alchemy may be briefly described as turning away from the world to God, and its constituents are four. 1. The knowledge of self. 2. The knowledge of God. 3. The knowledge of this world as it really is. 4. The knowledge of the next world as it really is. We shall now proceed to expound these four constituents in order. Chapter 1. The knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is the key to the knowledge of God, according to the saying, "He who knows himself knows God." And as it is written in the Quran, "We will show them our signs in the world and in themselves, that the truth may be manifest to them." Now nothing is nearer to you than yourself, and if you don't know yourself, how can you know anything else? If you say, "I know myself," meaning your outward shape, body, face, limbs, and so forth, such knowledge can never be a key to the knowledge of God. Nor if your knowledge as to that which is within only extends so far that when you are hungry you eat, and when you are angry you attack someone, will you progress any further in this path, for the beasts are your partners in this? But real knowledge consists in knowing the following things. What are you in yourself, and from where did you come? Where are you going, and for what purpose have you come to tarry here a while? And in what does your real happiness and misery consist? Some of your attributes are those of animals, some of devils, and some of angels, and you have to find out which of these attributes are accidental and which are essential. Till you know this, you cannot find out where your real happiness lies. The occupation of animals is eating, sleeping, and fighting. Therefore, if you are an animal, busy yourself in these things. Devils are busy stirring up mischief and in guile and deceit. If you belong to them, do their work. Angels contemplate the beauty of God and are entirely free from animal qualities. If you are of angelic nature, then strive towards your origin, that you may know and contemplate the Most High, and be delivered from the thraldom of lust and anger. You should also discover why you have been created with these two animal instincts, whether that they should subdue and lead you captive, or whether that you should subdue them, and in your upward progress make of one your steed, and of the other your weapon. The first step to self-knowledge is to know that you are composed of an outward shape called the body, and an inward entity called the heart or soul. By heart I do not mean the piece of flesh situated in the left of our bodies, but that which uses all the other faculties as its instruments and servants. In truth, it does not belong to the visible world, but to the invisible, and has come into this world as a traveller visits a foreign country for the sake of merchandise, and will presently return to its native land. It is the knowledge of this entity and its attributes which is the key to the knowledge of God. Some idea of the reality of the heart or spirit may be obtained by a man closing his eyes and forgetting everything around except his individuality. He will thus also obtain a glimpse of the unending nature of that individuality. Too close inquiry, however, into the essence of spirit is forbidden by the law. In the Quran it is written, "They will question thee concerning the spirit. Say, the spirit comes by the command of my Lord." Thus much is known of it, that it is an indivisible essence belonging to the world of decrees, and that it is not from everlasting, but created. An exact philosophical knowledge of the spirit is not a necessary preliminary to walking in the path of religion, but comes rather as the result of self-discipline and perseverance in that path. As it is said in the Quran, "Those who strive in our way, verily we will guide them to the right paths." For the carrying on of this spiritual warfare by which the knowledge of oneself and of God is to be obtained, the body may be figured as a kingdom, the soul as its king, and the different senses and faculties as constituting an army. Reason may be called the vizier or prime minister, passion the revenue collector, and anger the police officer. Under the guise of collecting revenue, passion is continually prone to plunder on its own account, while resentment is always inclined to harshness and extreme severity. Both of these, the revenue collector and the police officer, have to be kept in due subordination to the king, but not killed or expelled, as they have their own proper functions to fulfill. But if passion and resentment master reason, the ruin of the soul infallibly ensues. A soul which allows its lower faculties to dominate the higher is as one who should hand over an angel to the power of a dog or a Mussulman to the tyranny of an unbeliever. The cultivation of demonic, animal, or angelic qualities results in the production of corresponding characters, which in the day of judgment will be manifested in visible shapes, the sensual appearing as swine, the ferocious as dogs and wolves, and the pure as angels. The aim of moral discipline is to purify the heart from the rust of passion and resentment, till, like a clear mirror, it reflects the light of God. Someone may object here, but if man has been created with animal and demonic qualities as well as angelic, how are we to know that the latter constitute his real essence, while the former are merely accidental and transitory? To this I answer that the essence of each creature is to be sought in that which is highest in it and peculiar to it. Thus the horse and the ass are both burden-bearing animals, but the superiority of the horse to the ass consists in its being adapted for use in battle. If it fails in this, it becomes degraded to the rank of burden-bearing animals. Similarly with man, the highest faculty in him is reason, which fits him for the contemplation of God. If this predominates in him, when he dies, he leaves behind him all tendencies to passion and resentment, and becomes capable of association with angels. As regards his mere animal qualities, man is inferior to many animals, but reason makes him superior to them, as it is written in the Quran, "To man we have subjected all things in the earth." But if his lower tendencies have triumphed, after death he will ever be looking towards the earth and longing for earthly delights. Now the rational soul in man abounds in marvels both of knowledge and power. By means of it he masters arts and sciences, can pass in a flash from earth to heaven and back again, can map out the skies and measure the distances between the stars. By it also he can draw the fish from the sea and the birds from the air, and can subdue animals to his service like the elephant, the camel, and the horse. His 5 senses are like 5 doors opening on the external world. But more wonderful than this, his heart has a window which opens on the unseen world of spirits. In the state of sleep, when the avenues of the senses are closed, this window is opened and man receives impressions from the unseen world, and sometimes foreshadowings of the future. His heart is then like a mirror which reflects what is pictured in the tablet of fate. But even in sleep, thoughts of worldly things dull this mirror, so that the impressions it receives are not clear. After death, however, such thoughts vanish, and things are seen in their naked reality. And the saying in the Quran is fulfilled, "We have stripped the veil from off thee, and your sight today is keen." The opening of a window in the heart towards the unseen also takes place in conditions approaching those of prophetic inspiration, when intuitions spring up in the mind, unconveyed through any sense channel. The more a man purifies himself from fleshly lusts and concentrates his mind on God, the more conscious will he be of such intuitions. Those who are not conscious of them have no right to deny their reality. Nor are such intuitions confined only to those of prophetic rank. Just as iron, by sufficient polishing, can be made into a mirror, so any mind, by due discipline, can be rendered receptive to such impressions. It was at this truth the prophet hinted when he said, "Every child is born with a predisposition towards Islam, and his parents make a Jew, or a Christian, or a star worshipper of him." Every human being has heard in the depths of his consciousness the question, "Am I not your Lord?" and answered yes to it. But some hearts are like mirrors, so befouled with rust and dirt that they give no clear reflections, while those of the prophets and saints, though they are men of like passions with us, are extremely sensitive to all divine impressions. Nor is it only by reason of knowledge acquired and intuitive that the soul of man holds the first rank among created things, but also by reason of power. Just as angels preside over the elements, so does the soul rule the members of the body. Those souls which attain a special degree of power not only rule their own body, but those of others also. If they wish a sick man to recover, he recovers, or a person in health to fall ill, he becomes ill. Or if they will the presence of a person, he comes to them. According to whether the effects produced by these powerful souls are good or bad, they are termed miracles or sorceries. These souls differ from common folk in three ways. 1. What others only see in dreams, they see in their waking moments. 2. While others' wills only affect their own bodies, these, by willpower, can move bodies extraneous to themselves. 3. The knowledge which others acquire by laborious learning comes to them by intuition. These three, of course, are not the only marks which differentiate them from common people, but the only ones that come within our cognizance. Just as no one knows the real nature of God but God himself, so no one knows the real nature of a prophet but a prophet. Nor is this to be wondered at, as in everyday matters we see that it is impossible to explain the charm of poetry to one whose ear is insusceptible of cadence and rhythm, or the glories of colour to one who is stone blind. Besides mere incapacity, there are other hindrances to the if we are to arrive at pure spiritual truth, we must put away, for the time, knowledge which has been acquired by external processes and which too often hardens into dogmatic prejudice. A mistake of an opposite kind is made by shallow people who, echoing some phrases which they have caught from Sufi teachers, go about decrying all knowledge. This is as if a person who was not an adept at alchemy were to go about saying alchemy is better than in gold, and were to refuse gold when it was offered to him. Alchemy is better than gold, but real alchemists are very rare, and so are real Sufis. He who has a mere smattering of Sufism is not superior to a learned man, any more than he who has tried a few experiments in alchemy has ground for despising a rich man. Anyone who will look into the matter will see that happiness is necessarily linked with the knowledge of God. Each faculty of ours delights in that for which it was created. Lust delights in accomplishing desire, anger in taking vengeance, the eye in seeing beautiful objects, and the ear in hearing harmonious sounds. The highest function of the soul of man is the perception of truth. In this accordingly it finds its special delight. Even in trifling matters, such as learning chess, this holds good, and the higher the subject matter of the knowledge obtained, the greater the delight. A man would be pleased at being admitted into the confidence of a prime minister, but how much more if the king makes an intimate of him and discloses state secrets to him? An astronomer who by his knowledge can map the stars and describe their courses derives more pleasure from his knowledge than the chess player from his. Seeing then that nothing is higher than God, how great must be the delight which springs from the true knowledge of him. A person in whom the desire for this knowledge has disappeared is like one who has lost his appetite for healthy food, or who prefers feeding on clay to eating bread. All bodily appetites perish at death with the organs they use, but the soul does not die, and retains whatever knowledge of God it possesses, nay, increases it. An important part of our knowledge of God arises from the study and contemplation of our own bodies, which reveal to us the power, wisdom, and love of the Creator. His power, in that from a mere drop he has built up the wonderful frame of man. His wisdom is revealed in its intricacies and the mutual adaptability of its parts, and his love is shown by his not only supplying such organs as are absolutely necessary for existence, as the liver, the heart, and the brain, but those which are not absolutely necessary, as the hand, the foot, the tongue, and the eye. To these he has added, as ornaments, the blackness of the hair, the redness of lips, and the curve of the eyebrows. Man has been truly termed a microcosm or little world in himself, and the structure of his body should be studied not only by those who wish to become doctors, but by those who wish to attain to a more intimate knowledge of God. Just as close study of the niceties and shades of language in a great poem reveals to us more and more of the genius of its author. But when all is said, the knowledge of the soul plays a more important part in leading to the knowledge of God than the knowledge of our body and its functions. The body may be compared to a steed and the soul to its rider. The body...
Let me see what you said, Kareem said. Apparently, Ibn Arabi is considered the highest Sufi you can get. You think Al-Ghazali is a genius? Yeah, he sounds very intelligent. That's why I listened to the first 2 minutes, and I was like, yeah, nah, I'm gonna stream this, and then I'm gonna practice some Arabic. But it's a good book. It's a good read. Got some good information.
was created for the soul for the body. If a man knows not his own soul, which is the nearest thing to him, what is the use of claiming to know others? It is as if a beggar who has not the wherewithal for a meal should claim to be able to feed a town. In this chapter, we have attempted to some degree to expound the greatness of man's soul. He who neglects it and suffers its capacities to rust or to degenerate must necessarily be the loser in this world and the next. The true greatness of man lies in his capacity for eternal progress. Otherwise, in this temporal sphere, he is the weakest of all things, being subject to hunger, thirst, heat, cold, and sorrow. Those things he takes most delight in are often the most injurious to him, and those things which benefit him are not to be obtained without toil and trouble. As to his intellect, a slight disarrangement of matter in his brain is sufficient to destroy or madden him. As to his power, the sting of a wasp is sufficient to rob him of ease and sleep. As to his temper, he is upset by the loss of a sixpence. As to his beauty, he is little more than nauseous matter covered with a fair skin. Without frequent washing, he becomes utterly repulsive and disgraceful. In truth, man in this world is extremely weak and contemptible. It is only in the next that he will be of value, if by means of the alchemy of happiness he rises from the rank of beasts to that of angels. Otherwise his condition will be worse than the brutes. which perish and turn to dust. It is necessary for him at the same time that he is conscious of his superiority as the climax of created things, to learn to know also his helplessness, as that too is one of the keys to the knowledge of God. Chapter 2. The Knowledge of God. It is a well-known saying of the prophet that he who knows himself knows God. That is, by contemplation of his own being and attributes, man arrives at some knowledge of God. But since many who contemplate themselves do not find God, it follows that there must be some special way of doing so. As a matter of fact, there are two methods of arriving at this knowledge, but one is so abstruse that it is not adapted to ordinary intelligences, and therefore is better left unexplained. The other method is as follows. When a man considers himself, he knows that there was a time when he was non-existent, as it is written in the Quran. Does it not occur to man that there was a time when he was nothing? Further, he knows that he was made out of a drop of water, in which there was neither intellect nor hearing, sight, head, hands, feet, etc. From this it is obvious that whatever degree of perfection he may have arrived at, he did not make himself, nor can he now make a single hair. How much more helpless then was his condition when he was a mere drop of water? Thus, as we have seen in the first chapter, he finds in his own being, reflected in miniature so to speak, the power, wisdom, and love of the Creator.
So far,
I
have to say, I pretty much agree with 99% of what I heard. Let me look this guy up. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. All right, so al-Ghazali was born in Tus, Iran, or Taus, either Tus or Taus, one of the two. Not sure how you say it. Okay. Let's go into his story. El-Ghazilis in Latin. So he was born in the 1100s. Damn. Hold on. I don't know why that didn't work. I'm on a very old MacBook, so this thing is somehow still working. It's not even letting me get off this page right here. All right, we're gonna exit the page. Let's see, did that disconnect? Nope, it's still connected. One of the greatest philosophers of Islam and humanity. I'm trying to get his, let me close this window and open it again. This MacBook is ancient MacBook. Still got it though, still got it. 2015. So, all right, Al-Ghazali. You know I'm always looking for information, Kareem. Good information, helpful information. All right, here we go. It's working now. All right, Al-Ghazali was a Shafi'i Sunni. All right, what is this Shafi'i? Shafi'i school is one of the four major schools of Islamic jurisprudence within Sunni Islam, belonging to the Ahl al-Hadith tradition. It is named after the Muslim scholar, jurist, and traditionist al-Shafi'i, or al-Shafi'ah, also known as the father of Muslim jurisprudence in the early 9th century. All right, so he followed this Shafi'i dude. Al-Ghazali is considered to be the 11th century's Mujaddid, a renewer of the faith who, according to the prophetic hadith, appears once every 100 years to restore the faith of the Islamic community. Yeah, you know, That makes sense. I'm following his philosophy, and I like the way he forms his arguments. So he was born in the Seljuk Empire. So he was born in 1058. It was a high medieval Turkic, culturally Persian empire. So when I hear Turkic, right, I don't know why, but it's always a confusing thing for me, because it's like, okay, who are the Turks? All right. We know they say the Turks came from Central Asia originally, and then they settled in what we know as actually, let me look into this. The Seljuk Empire. I'm getting really good with geography, so looking at these maps will make everything nice and clear. This is the Seljuk Empire from 1037 until damn, I lost the end date. Let me see. From 1037 to 1194. They're saying this is the year 1090, around 1090. They didn't put a key on here. It would have been nice to have a key. But it seems like, really, from what I see, and this is pretty consistent, all the empires had control along the Hijaz region of the Arabian Peninsula. And then over here would be like Oman, UAE, what's this called again? Like Abu Dhabi and stuff over here. I forget what country this is. I think this is Bahrain right here. Right, Kareem? This is Bahrain. Bahrain. Over here is Kuwait. Up here is Iraq. Right? Look, I look at maps every day, man. I know my geography, Kareem. Trust me. Let me see. Okay, so, and then we know in this northwestern region would have been the Nabatea and the what's it called? Damn, I can't remember. Jerusalem, obviously, and Damascus, Syria, modern day Syria. Over here, Anatolia, or Turkey as we know it today. And then this is Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz, which is Iran, Tabriz, Iran. Once you get up in here, you're getting near the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis. Over here is the Caspian Sea, and to the left of it is the Black Sea above Turkey. And then, of course, you got the Mediterranean. This is Cyprus. This is Greece over here. I'm not sure what island that is right there, though. Okay. Then you got, we're going to go a little bit further east. And I believe once you go further east, you're in the stands. So I know obviously down here is India. So you're going to get like Pakistan and Afghanistan over here. I believe this is probably Afghanistan right here. And then Pakistan is right here. I know Turkestan and Kazakhstan somewhere in here. Turkmenistan, because this is the Samarkand. So the Turkmenistan, this gotta be where the Turks come from, right? Just based off the name. So let me see. Samarkand is in Uzbekistan, excuse me. Samarkand is in Uzbekistan. And Samarkand, man, this is a place I would love to see one day. I gotta travel. I gotta get over there in Uzbekistan. That'd be crazy if I get over there in Uzbekistan and show y'all Samarkand. That's one of the, it's only a $1,200 flight to get over there. It's only $1,200 to get to, what's it called? Uzbekistan. It's on the Silk Road. the ancient trade route linking China to the Mediterranean, Silk Road. That's another thing I want to start looking at is the trade maps. So the new maps I'm going to be bringing out are going to be trade maps instead of just regular maps. I want to see all the trade routes, because the trade routes is going to tell you the story of the human activity the same way it does today. So we're going to start looking at trade maps. Oh, I lost connection to the audio. We're going to stop screen share and re-screen share. Listen to a little bit more of Al-Ghazali. Hold on, I got to see where these Turks come from though. 1 second. Exactly where they come from. Where do Turkic people originate? All right. So they're saying they come from the Altai Mountains spanning modern day Mongolia, Siberia, and Kazakhstan. But here's the thing, right? I'm trying to get the racialization of these people. All right, who are they? Are they the Boston bomber Johar Tsarnaev types, or are they the what's the Mongol ruler dude's name? Are they that type? Who are these Turkic peoples? Oh wow, this is crazy. Bust of Cool Keegan, and yeah, he Asian. He Asian for real, for real. Second Turkic Khaganate. All right, I see who they are. I could tell by looking at them. Oh, wait, it's not sharing? Hold on. It's not even sharing. There we go. That's what I was looking at right there. I gotta redo this because StreamYard is always messing up a little bit. All right, there we go. Fixed it a little bit. All right, I'm gonna go back to the book, the audio book. Oh man, still not sharing. Hold on. Let's try that again. So he's still talking about
tongue,
There we
salivating
go.
glands, and the throat for its deglutition, we find a contrivance which cannot be improved upon. Similarly, whoever considers his hand with its 5 fingers of unequal lengths, 4 of them with 3 joints and the thumb with only 2, and the way in which it can be used for grasping or for carrying or for smiting, will frankly acknowledge that no amount of human wisdom could better it by altering the number and arrangement of the fingers, or in any other way. When a man further considers how his various wants of food, lodging, etc. are amply supplied from the storehouse of creation, he becomes aware that God's mercy is as great as his power and wisdom, as he has himself said, "My mercy is greater than my wrath." And according to the prophet's saying, God is more tender to his servants than a mother to her suckling child.
See, so God is more tending to his servants than a mother is suckling her child. But I was just having a conversation with Truist today, and I'm trying to get him to understand you can still talk about God without theologizing it. I made up a word, because basically, all these cultures around the world created theologies around a certain rationale, and that rationale is, existence. Where do we come from? What is our origin? If we exist, that means we have to come from something, right? To exist means you have an origin. So my argument to him was, well, you can't have something that exists without having the beginning, right? You can't begin something without a beginning. And just quite simply, we call that thing, that originator, we call that God. You could remove the theology from it and just use reasoning and rationale. And then when you think about religions and why there's so many religions, you just understand all these cultures of people, they had varying rationales of God. It's that simple. That's how simple I'm making it. And this is why I like this audiobook, is because he does reference the Quran and the scriptures in about, he's mentioning it here and there, right? But even without him mentioning it, he was still making strong arguments. He doesn't even need to mention anything about religion. The way he's framing his arguments are just very sound. Let's see. This is The Alchemy of Happiness by Al-Ghazali from Tus, Iran.
Thus, from his own creation, man comes to know God's existence, from the wonders of his bodily frame, God's power and wisdom, and from the ample provision made for his various needs, God's love. In this way, the knowledge of oneself becomes a key to the knowledge of God. Not only are man's attributes a reflection of God's attributes, but the mode of existence of man's soul affords some insight into God's mode of existence. That is to say, both God and the soul are invisible, indivisible, unconfined by space and time, and outside the categories of quantity and quality. Nor can the ideas of shape, color, or size attach to them. People find it hard to form a conception of such realities as are devoid of quality and quantity, etc. But a similar difficulty attaches to the conception of our everyday feelings, such as anger, pain, pleasure, or love. They are thought concepts and cannot be cognized by the senses, whereas quality, quantity, etc. are sense concepts. Just as the ear cannot take cognizance of color, nor the eye of sound, so in conceiving of the ultimate realities, God and the soul, we find ourselves in a region in which sense concepts can bear no part. So much, however, we can see that as God is ruler of the universe, and being himself beyond space and time, quantity and quality, governs things that are so conditioned, so the soul rules the body and its members, being itself invisible, indivisible, and unlocated in any special part. For how can the indivisible be located in that which is divisible? From all this we see how true is the saying of the prophet, God created man in his own likeness. And as we arrive at some knowledge of God's essence and attributes, from the contemplation of the soul's essence and attributes, so we come to understand God's method of working and government, and delegation of power to angelic forces, etc., by observing how each of us governs his own little kingdom. To take a simple instance, suppose a man wishes to write the name of God. First of all, the wish is conceived in his heart. It is then conveyed to the brain by the vital spirits. The form of the word God takes shape in the thought chambers of the brain. Thence it travels by the nerve channels and sets in motion the fingers, which in their turn set in motion the pen.
I'm starting to...
And thus the name God is traced on paper exactly as it had been conceived in the writer's brain. Similarly, when
He reminds me of, what's his name? Ibn Taymiyyah. Let me look up Ibn Taymiyyah real quick. So this dude was born in the 1050s. He died in 1111. That's the estimated date in Taus, Iran. They say he's a Shafi'i. Sunni Muslim. All right, let's look at Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah was Shia from Haran, Turkey. Now, it's possible. Let me see. Let me AI this real quick. Are there any ethnic or historical connection between Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Ghazali? You know, I'd just like to compare. Comparing is a good way to, you know, one of the greatest philosophers of Islam and humanity is Kareem. Okay. There is no known ethnic or family connection between Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Ghazali in the sense of shared ancestry or lineage. Al-Ghazali was a Persian scholar from Tus. So why they say he was Turkic? While Ibn Taymiyyah was born in Haran and is described in sources as having Arab and Kurdish lineage, so they came from different backgrounds. Their connection is historical and intellectual, not ethnic. Yeah, that's why I compared them. I compared them mainly because they're both philosophers, Muslim philosophers from around the same time period. Al-Ghazali lived in the 11th through 12th century, and Ibn Taymiyyah in the 13th through 14th century. So Ibn Taymiyyah came later and knew Al-Ghazali's works as part of the earlier Islamic scholarly tradition. Sources note that both were major Muslim thinkers who engaged questions of theology, philosophy, and Sufism, though they often disagreed on those subjects. In plain terms, so the short answer is no shared ethnicity is established, but yes, there is a strong intellectual historical relationship because Ibn Taymiyyah responded to and critiqued themes associated with Al-Ghazali's legacy. Wait, did I say legacy? Yep, Al-Ghazali's legacy. Okay, so Ibn Taymiyyah is from Haran, Turkey.
God wills a thing, it appears in the spiritual plane, which in the Quran is called the throne. From the throne it passes by a spiritual current to a lower plane called the chair. Then the shape of it appears on the tablet of destiny, whence by the meditation of the forces called angels, it assumes actuality and appears on the earth in the form of plants, trees, and animals, representing the will and thought of God. As the written...
You know what? I think I'm a switch over to some Ibn Taymiyyah too, so we could get both. So I'm gonna play a little bit more of this, and I'm gonna switch to Ibn Taymiyyah and see if there's an audio book of Ibn Taymiyyah.
Letters represent the wish conceived in the heart and the shape present in the brain of the writer. No one can understand a king but a king. Therefore God has made each of us a king in miniature, so to speak, over a kingdom which is an infinitely reduced copy of his own. In the kingdom of man, God's throne is represented by the soul, the archangel by the heart, the chair by the brain, the tablet by the treasure chamber of thought. The soul, itself unlocated and indivisible, governs the body as God governs the universe. In short, each of us is entrusted with a little kingdom and charged not to be careless in the administration of it. As regards the recognition of God's providence, there are many degrees of knowledge. The mere physicist is like an ant who, crawling on a sheet of paper and observing black letters spreading over it, should refer the cause to the pen alone. The astronomer is like an ant of somewhat wider vision, who should catch sight of the fingers moving the pen. i.e., he knows that the elements are under the power of the stars, but he does not know that the stars are under the power of the angels. Thus, owing to the different degrees of perception in people, disputes must arise in tracing effects to causes. Those whose eyes never see beyond the world of phenomena are like those who mistake servants of the lowest rank for the king. The laws of phenomena must be constant, or there could be no such thing as a science. But it is a great error to mistake the slaves for the master. As long as this difference in the perceptive faculty of observers exists, disputes must necessarily go on. It is as if some blind men, hearing that an elephant had come to their town, should go and examine it. The only knowledge of it which they can obtain comes through the sense of touch. So one handles the animal's leg, another his tusk, another his ear, and according to their several perceptions pronounce it to be a column, a thick pole, or a quilt, each taking a part for the whole. So the physicist and astronomer confound the laws they perceive with the lawgiver. A similar mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran, where it is related that he turned successively to stars, moon, and sun as the objects of his worship, till grown aware of him who made all these. He exclaimed,
See, and I was thinking about that because somewhere there was a mention of star worship. What was that in this audiobook, or where did I hear this star worship? Anyway, today, some point today, there was a mention of star worship, and then you hear the story of Abraham and how, you know, some Muslim schools will say it was his family and that he didn't participate in that type of worship. Let me go back real quick. And I know they also say the same thing about Muhammad.
a mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran, where it is related that he turned successively to stars, moon, and sun as the objects of his worship, till grown aware of him who made all these. He exclaimed, I love not them that set.
All right, so right there, Abraham is described as, in a way, similar to the I just want to say polytheists in general. Even though I shouldn't categorize them all as being exactly the same, but the people who worship the stars, so to speak. And I know they had different, I don't want to use the wrong word. Let me look up this word first. I'm going to make up a word, theophanims, all right? Theophoric. All right, different names for different stars and stuff like that.
We have a common instance.
Oh, but like I was saying, what's it called? They also, the story of Muhammad is similar in a way where he is described, and I need to read the Sirah or the Sirahs. He is described as coming from a family who partook in that, but he didn't himself. Something along those lines.
Of this referring to second causes, which ought to be referred to the first cause in the case of so-called illness. For instance, if a man ceases to take any interest in worldly matters, conceives a distaste for common pleasures, and appears sunk in depression, the doctor will say this is a case of melancholy.
Yo, this is insane, right? That he's able to articulate this in such a profound, clear, and concise manner 1,000 years ago, damn near. 1,000 years ago. He's talking about when man goes on a spiritual journey, right? When man elevates his being into not worshiping material things, Right? I know it sounds corny and shit, but if you're a real being, human man, you should go through this. I was going through this in college. So if there's grown men 30, 40, 50, and you say this ain't real, something's wrong with you. Something is wrong with you. You're malfunctioned.
And requires such and such. For instance, if a man ceases to take any interest in worldly matters, conceives a distaste for common pleasures, and appears sunk in depression, the doctor will say this is a case of melancholy and requires such and such a prescription. The physicist will say this is a dryness of the brain caused by hot weather and cannot be relieved till the air becomes moist. The astrologer will attribute it to some particular conjunction or opposition of planets. Thus far their wisdom reaches, says the Quran. It does not occur to them that what has really happened is this, that the Almighty has a concern for the welfare of that man, and has therefore commanded his servants, the planets or the elements, to produce such a condition in him that he may turn away from the world to his Maker. The knowledge of this fact is a lustrous pearl from the ocean of inspirational knowledge,
It's
to
true,
which
man.
all other forms of knowledge are as islands in the sea. The doctor, physicist, and astrologer are doubtless right, each in his particular branch of knowledge, but they do not see that illness is, so to speak, a cord of love by which God draws to himself the saints concerning whom he has said, I was sick, and ye visited me not. Illness itself is one of those forms of experience by which man arrives at the knowledge of God, as he says by the mouth of his prophet, sicknesses themselves are my servants, and are attached to my chosen. The foregoing remarks may enable us to enter a little more fully into the meaning of those exclamations so often on the lips of the faithful. God is holy. Praise be to God. There is no God but God. God is great. Concerning the last, we may say that it does not mean that God is greater than creation, for creation is his manifestation as light manifests the sun. And it would not be correct to say that the sun is greater than its own light. It rather means...
You see, look at this, how simple the argument is, right? This is why I'm saying Al-Ghazali could completely remove any religious text and provide these same arguments, and the arguments are still strong arguments. The rationale is still there, to where you can talk to an atheist and bring forth these arguments and get them to just leave the theology out of their brain for a second and just think step by step with logic, rationale, and reasoning. And you see that his argument, it makes sense.
Not be correct to say that the sun is greater than its own light. It rather means that God's greatness immeasurably transcends our cognitive faculties, and that we can only form a very dim and imperfect idea of it. If a child...
Look, I'm going to say this. People nowadays have gotten so smart that they no longer believe in God. And I think there's a correlation between the way the world is and that arrogance that like people have. Like, for example, I always say this, like, yo, you got to realize the world today is not what it was like in like 2010, for example. The average person, you could talk to the average person in 2010, they still believed in God. Even in 2010, this new like atheistic society and just how weird shit is now is fairly recent. I would say it's at best 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. then there's a correlation between our technological advances and the decline in the belief in God.
Child asks us to explain to him the pleasure which exists in wielding sovereignty. We may say it is like the pleasure he feels in playing bat and ball, though in reality the two have nothing in common, except that they both come under the category of pleasure. Thus the exclamation, "God is great," means that his greatness far exceeds all our powers of comprehension. Moreover, such imperfect knowledge of God as we can attain to is not a mere speculative knowledge, but must be accompanied by devotion and worship. When a man dies, he has to do with God alone, and if we have to live with a person, our happiness entirely depends on the degree of affection we feel towards him. Love is the seed of happiness, and love to God is fostered and developed by worship. Such worship and constant remembrance of God implies a certain degree of austerity and curbing of bodily appetites. Not that a man is intended altogether to abolish these, for then the human race would perish, but strict limits must be set to their indulgence, and as
This is crazy, man. This dude, he wrote one of the most pertinent books that I would say the world needs today. And probably for his time, he may have been rare for his time. But when I look back in history, I do see a similitude between him and a few other philosophers. And it seems like this caliber of philosopher, thinker, polymath, whatever, was more prevalent back then than it is now. Now it seems like it would be very rare to come across someone who has these immense qualities amongst different categories, like being great at different things, especially an intellectual category. It seems like it was more prevalent in the past, in the Middle Ages, during the medieval period, during the post-Islamic period, compared to the modern era. I should have said the Islamic Golden Age. That would have been a better way of phrasing it.
a man is not the best judge in his own case as to what these limits should be, he had better consult some spiritual guide on the subject. Such spiritual guides.
We got to the point where we let, I'm going to say it, we let female ideology run society, bro. Who the fuck's idea was that? We let these 19th century feminists, 20th century feminists, and then the 21st century feminists, it has like no credibility, but we allowed those ideologies to, and I would argue, probably some of the early movements may have been necessary, but during today's time, oh my God, we let them run our intellectual and social world. Nah, come on, man. I don't know what the fuck. Who, man, it's crazy. But you see what you get.
Are the prophets and the laws which they have.
You speak to a woman today, she's gonna tell you, well, I don't really, I believe. What's she gonna say? She's gonna say, well, here's a guarantee. I guarantee she's gonna say she's spiritual. All right, this is what every female says. Oh, I'm spiritual, but that don't even mean she believe in God. Tell you the truth, we live in an era where I'm not even gonna say women. I'm not gonna single them out, but there are people who put Bible verses in their bios. They got all these slogans in their bios and shit. And then you see how they live life. They live it completely the opposite. One thing I didn't told people before. Yo, Christianity in today's day and age, it's a joke. They allowed women to turn their, and I'm talking about white men. They allowed women to turn their Christian faith, their Catholic faith, into a fucking joke. Into a joke. I don't deal with simps. I don't like simps. I think simps are a problem. But like Al-Ghazali is saying in this audiobook, what you do is going to be either to your own destruction or your own benefit. So it really don't matter.
Laid down under divine inspiration, prescribe the limits which must be observed in these matters.
Now, hold on. And see, I'm a little bit disappointed in people in general, especially if you're a fucking 2026 progressive, bro. There should be no such thing as a 2026 progressive. There should be no such thing as a 2026 liberal or even, I'm not gonna say Democrat, but liberal. If you're a liberal in 2026, something's wrong with you, because our society is completely liberal and the shit is broken. Shit is broken. So we're seeing the destruction and demise of liberal society. I'm not even gonna say Western, because everyone says Western. I'm gonna say liberal. And I'm making a distinction between liberal and democratic, or Democrat. Because to be a Democrat just means that you believe in, actually, there's a lot of different meanings to it. But one of the meanings is implied in the fact that you support government funding, government programs, which is actually a good thing, right? If you don't have a fucking corrupt government. But when you live in a society that's a capitalistic society, it doesn't mean that it has to have any ethics and morals outside of profit for the most part. And that's a problem. But I'm going off on a tangent. We play this video. And if you're from Canada and you are progressive, I don't like you. So Kareem, don't be a Canadian progressive, bro. Please be moderate. That should be the way. The way should always be moderation. Extreme on either end, you're extreme. And extreme is always a reaction. We got to work toward moderation, moderation, moderation.
He who transgresses these limits wrongs his own soul, as it is written in the Quran.
You see, hold on, I gotta go back. He just said it right there. He who transgresses these limits wrongs his own soul. Is that what I just heard? Yeah.
Divine inspiration, prescribe the limits which must be observed in these matters. He who transgresses these limits wrongs his own soul.
In the Asian cultures, the East Asian cultures, the Buddhists and all that stuff, they call that karma. The Buddhists will call that karma. The Hindu, or I don't know if I should call them Hindu, but the Buddhists, they're gonna say that's your karma. Same concept, different name.
As it is written in the Quran.
And don't make me, I started to do this maybe like 2 years ago. I started to show the similarities between the Vedas and the Quran. Because believe it or not, there is some overlap. And it might not even be the Vedas. I got to make sure I'm talking about the right one, but it is a book that comes from India. I got to bring up that live stream and go look at that live stream from like 2-3 years ago. when I broke that down.
Notwithstanding this clear pronouncement of the Quran, there are those who, through their ignorance of God, do transgress these limits, and this ignorance may be due to several different causes. Firstly, there are some who, failing to find God by observation, conclude that there is no God and that this world of wonders made itself, or existed from everlasting. They are like a man who, seeing a beautifully written letter, should suppose that it had written itself without a writer, or had always existed. People in this state of mind are so far gone in...
Damn, hold on, we gotta go back. Oh, shit.
Or existed from everlasting. They are like a man who, seeing a beautifully written letter, should suppose that it had written itself without a writer, or had always existed. People in this state of mind are so far gone in error that it is of little use to argue with them. Such are some of the physicists.
Yeah, and we all know that state of mind, right? That's really just an atheistic state of mind. And I would like to say that's usually correlated when like a person is lost. It's correlated when a person is really struggling inside. I would like to think we all go through that, unless you're lucky. Then maybe you've been protected from that state of mind. But yeah, when you're in that state of mind, it's hard for someone to talk you out of that. That's true.
Letter should suppose that it had written itself without a writer, or had always existed. People in this state of mind are so far gone in error that it is of little use to argue with them. Such are some of the physicists and astronomers to whom we referred above. Some, through ignorance of the real nature of the soul, repudiate the doctrine of a future life in which man will be called to account and be rewarded or punished. They regard themselves as no better than animals or vegetables, and equally perishable.
Yep.
Some, on the other hand, believe in God and a future life, but with a weak belief.
Yeah.
They say to themselves, God is great and independent of us. Our worship or abstinence from worship is a matter of entire indifference to him. Their state of mind is like that of a sick man who, when prescribed a certain regime by his doctor, should say, well, if I follow it or don't follow it, what does it matter to the doctor? It certainly does not matter to the doctor, but the patient may destroy himself by his disobedience. Just as surely as unchecked sickness of the body ends in bodily death, so does uncured disease of the soul end in future misery. According to the saying of the Quran, only those shall be saved who come to God with a sound heart. A fourth kind of unbelievers are those who say, the law tells us to abstain from anger, lust, and hypocrisy. This is plainly impossible, for man is created with these qualities inherent in him. You might as well tell us to make black white. These foolish people ignore the fact that the law does not tell us to uproot these passions, but to restrain them within due limits, so that by avoiding the greater sins, we may obtain forgiveness of the smaller ones. Even the Prophet of God said, I am a man like you and get angry like others. And in the Quran it is written, God loves those who swallow down their anger, not those who have no anger at all. A fifth class lays stress on the beneficence of God and ignores his justice, saying to themselves, well, whatever we do, God is merciful. They do not consider that though God is merciful, thousands of human beings perish miserably in hunger and disease. They know that whosoever wishes for a livelihood or for wealth or learning must not merely say God is merciful, but must exert himself. Although the Quran says every living creature's support comes from God, it is also written, man obtains nothing except by striving. The fact is, such teaching is really from the devil, and such people only speak with their lips and not with their heart. A sixth class claims to have reached such a degree of sanctity that sin cannot affect them. Yet if you treat one of them with disrespect, he will bear a grudge against you for years, and if one of them is deprived of a morsel of food which he thinks is his due, the whole world will appear dark and narrow to him. Even if any of them do really conquer their passions, they have no right to make such a claim, for the prophets, the highest of humankind, constantly confessed and bewailed their sins. Some of them had such a dread of sin that they even abstained from lawful things. Thus it is related of the prophet that one day when a date had been brought to him, he would not eat it, as he was not sure that it had been lawful by obtained. Whereas these free livers will swallow gallons of wine and claim, I shudder as I write, to be superior to the prophet whose sanctity was endangered by a date, while theirs is unaffected by all that wine. Surely they deserve that the devil should drag them down to perdition. Real saints know that he who does not master his appetites does not deserve the name of a man, and that the true Muslim is one who will cheerfully acknowledge the limits imposed by the law. He who endeavors on whatever pretext to ignore its obligations is certainly under satanic influence and should be talked to, not with a pen, but with a sword. These pseudo-mystics sometimes pretend to be drowned in a sea of wonder, but if you ask them what they are wondering at, they do not know. They should be told to wonder as much as they please, but at the same time to remember that the Almighty is their Creator, and that they are His servants. Chapter 3. The knowledge of this world. This world is a stage or marketplace passed by pilgrims on their way to the next. It is here that they are to provide themselves with provisions for the way, or to put it plainly, man acquires here by the use of his bodily senses some knowledge of the works of God, and through them of God himself, the sight of whom will constitute his future beatitude. It is for the acquisition of this knowledge that the spirit of man has descended into this world of water and clay. As long as his senses remain with him, he is said to be in this world. When they depart, and only his essential attributes remain, he is said to have gone to the next world. While man is in this world, two things are necessary for him. First, the protection and nurture of his soul. Secondly, the care and nurture of his body. The proper nourishment of the soul, as shown above, is the knowledge and love of God, and to be absorbed in the love of anything but God is the ruin of the soul. The body, so to speak, is simply the riding animal of the soul, and perishes while the soul endures. The soul should take care of the body, just as a pilgrim on his way to Mecca takes care of his camel. But if the pilgrim spends his whole time feeding and adorning his camel, the caravan will leave him behind, and he will perish in the desert. Man's bodily needs are simple, being composed under three heads: food, clothing, and a dwelling place. But the bodily desires which were implanted in him with a view to procuring these are apt to rebel against reason, which is of later growth than they. Accordingly, as we saw above, they require to be curbed and restrained by the divine laws promulgated by the prophets. Considering the world with which we have for a time to do, we find it divided into three departments: animal, vegetable, and mineral. The products of all three are continually needed by man and have given rise to three principal occupations: those of the weaver, the builder, and the worker in metal. These again have many subordinate branches, such as tailors, masons, smiths, etc. None can be quite independent of others. This gives rise to various business connections and relations, and these too frequently afforded occasions for hatred, envy, jealousy, and other maladies.
Hold on. Put this on the charger real quick. Just dropping some game right there. Gotta rewind that. Pick up that game. Making sure I got the right information. You know, I don't have an appetite in this world to talk to people who are just, I don't know, fucking lost. Low IQ. That's what we call them now, low IQ. I don't really have the tolerance for low IQ people in this day and age. Damn.
Occupations, those of the weaver, the builder, and the worker in metal. These again have many subordinate branches, such as tailors, masons, smiths, etc. None can be quite independent of others. This gives rise to various business connections and relations, and these too frequently afforded occasions for hatred, envy, jealousy, and other maladies of the soul. Hence come quarrels and strife, and the need of political and civil government and knowledge of law.
Right.
Thus the occupations and businesses of the world have become more and more complicated and troublesome, chiefly owing to the fact that men have forgotten that their real necessities are only three: clothing, food, and shelter.
He's saying this in the 1100s. Somewhere between the 1100s and late 1000s or 1000. He's saying this. It's almost like he wrote this last week. Timeless. Just a timeless masterpiece. This book is. Like, whoa. Wow, look at this. Experience the timeless wisdom of Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali in The Alchemy of Happiness, now available as a real book. This full audiobook with optimized mobile viewing presents al-Ghazali's spiritual masterpiece in a simplified translation by Claude Field in 1901, narrated by Mark Cassidy. The Alchemy of Happiness serves as a guide to understanding the soul, the nature of happiness, and the path to true fulfillment through self-awareness and devotion to God. In this essential treatise, al-Ghazali explores the relationship between knowledge, morality, and divine love, offering practical wisdom on how to achieve inner peace and enlightenment. It sounds kind of Eastern, right? Sounds Eastern.
Shelter, and that these exist only with the object of making the body a fit vehicle for the soul in its journey towards the next world. They have fallen into the same mistake as the pilgrim to Mecca mentioned above, who, forgetting the object of his pilgrimage and himself, should spend his whole time feeding and adorning his camel. Unless a man maintains the strictest watch, he is certain to be fascinated and entangled by the world, which, as the prophet said, is a more potent sorcerer than Harut and Marut. The deceitful character of the world comes out in the following ways.
Here we go.
In the first place, it pretends that it will always remain with you, while as a matter of fact, it is slipping away from you, moment by moment.
That's right.
And bidding you farewell.
That's right.
Like a shadow which seems stationary, but is actually always moving.
That's right.
Again, the world presents itself under the guise of a radiant but immoral sorceress, pretends to be in love with you, fondles you, and then goes off to your enemies, leaving you to die of chagrin and despair. Jesus, upon whom be peace, saw the world revealed in the form of an ugly old hag. He asked her how many husbands she had possessed. She replied that they were countless. He asked whether they had died or been divorced, and she said that she had slain them all. I marvel, he said, at the fools who see what you have done to others and still desire you. This sorceress decks herself out in gorgeous and jeweled apparel and veils her face. Then she goes forth to seduce men, too many of whom follow her to their own destruction. The prophet has said that on Judgment Day the world will appear in the form of a hideous witch with green eyes and projecting teeth. Men beholding her will say, "Mercy on us, who is this?" The angels will answer, "This is the world for whose sake you quarreled and fought and embittered one another's lives." Then she will be cast into hell, when she will cry out, "O Lord, where are those my former lovers?" God will then command that they be cast after her. Whoever will seriously contemplate the past eternity during which the world was not in existence, and the future eternity during which it will not be in existence, will see that it is essentially like a journey in which the stages are represented by years, the leagues by months, the miles by days, and the steps by moments. What words then can picture the folly of the man who endeavors to make it his permanent abode and forms plans 10 years ahead regarding things he may never need, seeing that very possibly he may be under the ground in 10 days.
Yeah.
Those who have indulged without limit in the pleasures of the world, at the time of death will be like a man who has gorged himself to replenish on delicious viands and then vomits them up. The deliciousness has gone, but the disgrace remains. The greater the abundance of the possessions which they have enjoyed in the shape of gardens, male and female slaves, gold, silver, etc., the more keenly they will feel the bitterness of parting from them. This is a bitterness which will outlast death, for the soul which has contracted covetousness as a fixed habit will necessarily in the next world suffer from the pangs of unsatisfied desire. Another dangerous property of worldly things is that they at first appear as mere trifles, but each of these so-called trifles branches out into countless ramifications until they swallow up the whole of a man's time and energy. Jesus, on whom be peace, said, "The lover of the world is like a man drinking seawater. The more he drinks, the more thirsty he gets, till at last he perishes with thirst unquenched." The prophet said, "You can no more mix with the world without being contaminated by it than you can go into water without getting wet." The world is like a table spread for successive relays of guests who come and go. There are gold and silver dishes and abundance of food and perfumes. The wise guest eats as much as is sufficient for him, smells the perfumes, thanks his host, and departs. The foolish guest, on the other hand, tries to carry off some of the gold and silver dishes, only to find them wrenched out of his hands and himself thrust forth, disappointed and disgraced. We may close these illustrations of the deceitfulness of the world with the following short parable. Suppose a ship arrives at a certain well-wooded island. The captain of the ship tells the passengers he will stop a few hours there, and that they can go on shore for a short time, but warns them not to delay too long. Accordingly, the passengers disembark and stroll in different directions. The wisest, however, return after a short time, and finding the ship empty, choose the most comfortable places in it. A second band of the passengers spend a somewhat longer time on the island, admiring the foliage of the trees and listening to the song of the birds. Coming on board, they find the best places in the ship already occupied and have to content themselves with the less comfortable ones. A third party wanders still farther and, finding some brilliantly colored stones, carry them back to the ship. Their lateness in coming on board compels them to stow themselves away in the lower parts of the ship, where they find their loads of stones, which by this time have lost all their brilliancy, very much in their way. The last group go so far in their wanderings that they get quite out of reach of the captain's voice calling them to come on board, and at last he has to sail away without them. They wander about in a hopeless condition, and finally either perish of hunger or fall prey to wild beasts. The first group represents the faithful who keep aloof from the world altogether, and the last group the disbelievers who care only for this world and nothing for the next. The two intermediate classes are those who preserve their faith, but entangle themselves more or less with the vanities of things present. Although we have said so much against the world, it must be remembered that there are some things in the world which are not of it, such as knowledge and good deeds. A man carries what knowledge he possesses with him into the next world, and though his good deeds have passed, yet the effect of them remain in his character. Especially is this the case with acts of devotion, which result in the perpetual remembrance and love of God. These are among those good things, which, as the Quran says, pass not away. Other good things there are in the world, such as marriage, food, clothing, etc., which a wise man uses just in proportion as they help him to attain to the next world. Other things which engross the mind, causing it to cleave to this world and to be careless of the next, are purely evil, and were alluded to by the prophet when he said, "The world is a curse, and all which is in it is a curse, except the remembrance of God, and that which aids it." Chapter 4. The knowledge of the next world. As regards the joys of heaven and the pains of hell which will follow this life, all believers in the Quran and the traditions are sufficiently informed. But it often escapes them that there is also a spiritual heaven and hell, concerning the former of which God said to his prophet, "Eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither hath it entered into the heart of man to conceive the things which are prepared for the righteous." In the heart of the enlightened man, there is a window opening on the realities of the spiritual world, so that he knows not by hearsay or traditional belief, but by actual experience what produces wretchedness or happiness in the soul, just as clearly and decidedly as the physician knows what produces sickness or health in the body. He recognizes that knowledge of God and worship are medicinal, and that ignorance and sin are deadly poisons.
So he's going on for another hour. I think, man, he cooked on this. Al-Ghazali, this is a masterpiece that I'm not going to finish tonight. But it is very refreshing to know that, damn, there's someone else in the world that thought like this. Because I feel like this is kind of how I think. So to see that there's someone in the world who had these same thoughts and beliefs is very refreshing. It's very refreshing. Before I close this out, I'm going to look for some Ibn Taymiyyah. I know different Islamic groups have different feelings about him. From what I read, Ibn Taymiyyah, he has a lot of he uses the Quran a lot to support his arguments. So I have this book here, which is The Disease of the Heart and Its Cure. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Sheikh Hassan Somali, Maybe that's who read it. Let's see.
الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إقرارا به وتوحيدا، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما مزيدا. أما بعد. So this is the first lesson where we will cover, inshaAllah ta'ala, the classical work of Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ad-Da wa Dawa, the disease and the cure, using the commentary of Shaykh al-Allama Salih al-Fawzan, and likewise Shaykh al-Allama Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, and likewise the explanation of some of the other mashayikh, scholars of al-Islam. And today,
so this is not Ibn Taymiyyah. This is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Hold on. Let me see. I don't even know who this is. Who is this? Looks like a nice book, but that's not what I'm looking for. So did they take Ibn Taymiyyah off of YouTube?
Refutation of Logic by Ibn Taymiyyah. Translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Issue: what is your esteemed opinion concerning the doctrine of the righteous predecessors, Salaf, in matters of belief? And how does it differ from the views of those who came later?
Hold on. All right, all right, this guy got it right here. They got it right here. Okay. 3 hours.
So I'm welcoming my brothers and my sisters and my respected elders and youngsters.
No, I'm not trying to theologize the channel out too much. You know, I just wanted to look for the damn. Hold on. All right, you know what? I'm about to end the stream because I'm thirsty and it's late. So y'all have a good night. I'll probably come back on tomorrow. Peace.